Hello, this will be the Project 1 critique for Kelsey Giroux, Ryan Dykey, and LauraLaQ. All right, so we will start here with Kelsey's imagery, pretty much just straightforward profile photograph, just your face and a relatively neutral background. We don't get a lot from it other than some sense of identity, recognizability. All right, so that's all that image was. It looks, looking at your images, Kelsey, it looked like you had a lot of exploration of it, and I think this image, you know, is almost has a spirituality to it, between like this washed out face and the eyes looking up and the sort of serene contemplative look on your face. It's funny. There, like, communicates a lot of emotion and thought, despite not having a lot of symbolism within the image, other than the dramatic light that you use. Almost feels like light from a church or something like that. But maybe I'm being influenced from looking at your history. But looking at your other imagery, you had a really vast array of explorations, many of which I found very successful, interesting, engaging. Like this image I really like. There's that one again. Got some kitties. Now this is one of my favorites. I don't know how you constructed that. Is that a mirror or whatever it is? It looks like a reflection of you, but it's within the book. I really reacted to that one. That one looks, playful, fun. These are kind of interesting. This filter, I think, adds something to the feeling of this image quite a bit. So anyways, a lot of interesting photographic explorations, and I don't know if photography is one of your primary mediums that you use. This image was particularly beautiful and insightful, as is that one. That one, this one was nice, and this one I really like too. But you're wielding the camera well and certainly using it in interesting ways to really kind of delve into this idea of identity. Getting back to your selected images, then this image becomes kind of interesting too. The environment, it feels like a shower, bathroom. And we have this light in there, and then again this sort of contemplative look, but this time you're kind of looking down, and there's this darkness, and this almost like a spotlight on you, and there's like this heaviness in this image, this heavy personal contemplation, and the idea about identity seems really weighted in this image, and which certainly is successful for this project. Whoops, skipped a little far ahead here, and then who you are not, and then we have this idea of cigarettes, and they'll look smoked. So, if we aren't looking at it in the context of who you are not, we would say, obviously, a smoker, and almost like a heavy smoker. I mean, you're smoking 4 at a time. But also there's this interesting placement of them where they're not near your mouth, where we consume these things, and they're on the ground, and they're partially burned down. So the image itself is fairly simple, but also there's a lot of disconnects that I have to try and reconcile, and I think that's often a successful way to go about creating photographs, is trying to make people reconcile the very disconnected elements. This one seems overtly, in my face about, there's a devil, demon, evil, look to a high contrast light, like this overtly saturated colors, and then the aggressive reds and orange, yellows are the overtly saturated color. There's just a lot of intensity in this image, and then the thing that I get that evil demon thing. I don't know that I necessarily get who the subculture is, but certainly reading your research paper, you get some insights, ideas of your thought process in the image. I think it's an image that it smacks me hard, and it is like, wow, really intense, but I want more depth to it, you know, like I don't, it's kind of ugly to look at, you know, and I don't know, I almost want something more that draws me in, that keeps me in there, because I would so much rather look at and contemplate, you know, the other images that you've created, like this, and this, um, and some of the other ones you got on Flickr. You know, this image is almost repellent, but that is also the point. You know, maybe that's the point you want to make. Sometimes as artists, you've got to hit people hard like that, and you know, kind of wake them up. But I still get no context for why you're a demon just looking at this image. That's really what I would like. Um, you know, from it, I'd like, you know, some symbolism or some environment, or maybe that's what needs, some environment, or you know, if you put this in a church or something like that. You know, subtly, even a stained glass window reference behind you or something like that. You know, I think that would be more effective. You know, so anyways, overall, you know, I'd say well done. But we will move along here, and we are going to look at Ryan's photographs. So, looking at your images, you know, we have, is this 1A? I think this is 1A. It's your basic, you know, kind of profile picture, though we get some environment to it, and there's water, and there's trees, and, you know, in my estimation, all good things, but this also add to identity in a sense. And then with this image, we are, you know, looking at, you know, the idea of the coffee and morning, and you know, trying to wake up. You know, that's what this feels like quite a bit. All right, so moving along here, you know, here we have it's such a, you know, I love this image. It almost feels staged, which kind of disappoints me a little bit, you know, because it almost feels like this slice of life. But it's your expression in the foreground that really kind of makes me feel like this staged element. And I don't know that it is, you know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You know, I almost, I don't know if I crop you out, but I love the background, you know, I love the children in the back seat, you know, this aggressive fighting, you know, going on, this pointing, and, you know, this harsh light coming in. And then we get this nice sort of serene urban environment that we see, you know, through that rear window. You know, so we have this lovely suburban existence and that tension of the everyday family, and you know, sibling rivalries. And I'm a little bit put off by your expression of the crazed mom look in there, because, you know, that's what gives me the sense of stage. I don't want this image to be staged because it is so real. You know, that child interaction, sibling interaction in the background is so real. So I wish there was more of a neutral, or if you're yelling at the kids or something, it'd feel much more natural. You know, maybe you're a good mom and you don't do that sort of thing. Anyways, so all right, looking at this, I was just, you know, I had looking at your paper. The one thing that struck out at me, I like the little story you tell about your students in their exhibition at the Omaha Jewish Community Center. I really like where you said, this year at the reception is the first year my students realized that the survivors they drew were in the same room as them. Needless to say, my students were quote unquote starstruck. When one survivor, Kitty Williams, told them she was just a normal person like them and was nobody special, my students replied with, "No, you're not. You are a survivor." What a great statement by a kid. What a wonderful thing for them to recognize. It also like has this interesting dynamic between the idea of us, you know, democracy, everyday people are in control, blah, 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 you know, we're all equal. But then the idea of elevating someone above in some ways contradicts that idea of a democracy, but we also need those symbols that abstraction of those symbols to help us comprehend this world, because it is so big and so complex, that it helps us, do that. And this is like this positive abstraction. We have a lot of this Hollywood National Choir abstraction of people and star system and whatever. That's very negative. But this is like a positive example of this. But it's interesting for the students to, that they take these images and elevate these people and use this idea of this, the power of this media to elevate them in a positive, constructive manner. I just want us to recognize that this same idea can be used in a sort of negative connotation, which is where this sort of cyberbullying comes into play. So we got this positive and this good thing, and then we have this negative thing. I can segue this into this photograph. I do really like this photograph simply because, the idea you've got this quote unquote, male gendered name. And you really play off this, and I'm sure you've dealt with this your whole life, and just the exhaustion you communicate in this image seems to tell you like, oh, I'm so tired of this. It's so stupid, and that's what I get from this expression in this image, and this image, already has like this mix of gender. But, if you put your name next to it, it even adds more of this personal connotation, this personal experience of this, where, I hate to say, things like this, but, we have this white privilege, and it's this real sort of thing that, we're kind of aware of, and like myself, I feel like I'm aware and I'm awake of it, but man, that last election really hit the privilege of male privilege. And, you kind of have all this stuff mixed up in here. And then you have this business tie on there, so there's this elitist status you're sort of representing. We have the white class and the blue collar, white collar and blue collar, so there's a lot of like just symbols in this photograph, this one photograph. And man, you deal with it well in this image. I really, really appreciate this. And just on top of it, you dealing with all this personal stuff I'm sure that you've had to deal with in your life. Well done. It's such a simple image. I'm not sure it was that simple to take or create. It probably took many tries, but it seems like such a simple image. But there's also, when you look at the details, so much content within it. So. All right, and then I like, this image, and we have this, again, this sort of positive image, mom, housewife, but then we also sort of take this and try to elevate that as sort of a superhero, which it is. That role is sort of a superhero role, raising children and taking care of the home, but, so we have that, but there may be a spouse or male figure in there. I don't know what, maybe that's not even related. Anyways, so yeah, and it's sort of an interesting abstraction that we're looking at. And you're looking at this subculture element here, and then I like this little bit of light, the filter I added up here, adds that, pushes that sort of mystique to it. But and maybe those are the questions that you want asking. Is it just a singular person doing all these things, or is there a support system beyond this that we don't see? Maybe that's what you're challenging or abstracting to make us consider it. Or maybe I'm just looking too deeply into the image. I've been accused of being a deep thinker before. So, anyways, well done, and I'm going to move along here to Laura's images. If the internet is going to cooperate. So, I don't know where you went, Laura. There you are. All right, here we go. Here's our typical, head, shoulders, portrait, profile picture. Well, now there's some filtration, it looks like to me, done on here. Softness, a slight color cast to it that maybe adds a little feeling or uniqueness. That's what we're all after with these filters, aren't we? This sort of unique imagery, which kind of, I find, this is what fascinates me with Instagram, is we want to, there's so much expression of us as unique individuals in it, and there's this, and that becomes the the whole thing of the social media is the power play between controlling our image and creating a positive image, and then this bullying aspect, critical aspect that comes in here. But we're all using these pre-made filters, and I resist that as a photographer. I want to go in there and I want to create something truly unique, because they can't be unique if everyone's using the same filters. Anyways, moving along. All right, so here's the next one, and we get this sort of America, car culture, suburbia. That's what I see when I look at this sort of imagery. But it also seems like a somewhat of a common image that we see on social media, this driving to a place, this person on the move in the world, getting their things done or going places. So I don't know. This image I really like. Like the other one I think is something I see sort of commonplace. It's sort of like an archetype. This image is not. There's like this, I don't really know what's going on. There's all this stuff in there, and then there's this person, this figure, and they seem like there's this laying down, exhausted, passed out, whatever it is. And there's all this stuff and stuff on them, and then you got this crazed chicken in your arms, and it's funny, it doesn't come across as sort of cutesy. There's like a seriousness when I look at this image. This image really piques my interest and makes me, curious, want to see, or not want. I want to see more about it. I want to think more about it. I want to figure out what the connections are and what your relationship within all this stuff is. So I think it's really a successful image. And if I'm following right, this is the who you are not image. So we have the mom at the supermarket and picking out the produce and taking the time and looking into it and trying to find the best for their family, and sniffing the fruit and finding just the right one, and that effort and perfection that we can put into our lives. And so, and then you use this as the anti, so that becomes interesting in that context. And in your statement, your research statement, you said, what is chosen to be represented in images is given power. Image makers also keep power from others by omitting their story. And that's a little bit what we talked about here. You showing this, and you put in this powerful image, it puts a certain sort of aura, superheroishness, kind of like we talked about with Ryan's image in the previous work. And so we're choosing what we choose to include in there. It's just as important, like I always tell my students, with a photograph, what you exclude is just important what you include. So, certainly seems true here. Yes. So, all right, let's take a look at your final image now. Looking at this one as your final image is who culture sees you, and seems to be that, stereotypical housewife, though it's not a stereotypical composition at all. I really appreciate this sort of worm's eye view that you're giving us. That adds a level of intrigue and interest to the image, which could easily be written off as like, oh, another feminist image, or housewife image. And at this point, maybe that's such ingrained to me. It's just, being a photographer and aware of Cindy Sherman, the brilliance of her work. And so, but in the end, I like this photograph. I like the use of the symbolism, the painted toenails, and the vacuumer, and the floor, and the living room, and it's a laundry basket, a toy basket, or whatever, and they all seem sort of huge. They're giant in this composition. So big they don't even fit within the frame of things. So it's, I think, a fairly well constructed image. So, all right. And I like in the end your paper you said, visual culture is a product of all that we see and experience together. Much of it deceives, but it can also be used to connect. And that, becomes, I think, the whole crux of social media and photography and collage and video and whatever it is. What's our intent? It's like everything else. What is our intent? Are we trying to do good with it, or are we trying to do evil with it, or whatever? And so that becomes the hard part. In many ways, it doesn't matter if it's social media or personal interactions, real interactions. It's the same thing. What are we doing with it? Are we doing good? Are we doing evil? And that's where I'm going to leave this.